Hey, who doesn't find the queen's pawn opening to be somewhat challenging? If you do, then this video is for you. So sit back and relax as I show you a very aggressive counter gambit that you can try out against one d4. Hey, this video is going to be full of traps and I hope you're going to watch it up to the end. I'm also going to show you how you can play the lines that I'm about to show you guys with white pieces. So this is why you play the same stuffs with both white and black pieces. So this is something that you already know, the Albin Counter-Gambit. But hey, Casper is full of surprises. You're probably going to see some new lines that you've never seen before. So the top played move by far is d takes e5, you already know. After which you go d4. Let's begin with something that you already know, you guys, where white plays pawn to e3 to get rid of your d pawn. Well, here you just simply go bishop b4 check, and if they block with their bishop, you first of all take on e3, that's the theory, and after bishop takes b4, you don't take the queen first, you take the f pawn with check, hoping to win the white queen after king takes f2 and queen takes d1. Not a surprise, you already know this. And again, if they don't take on f2 and instead they play king e2 to hold on to their queen on d1, well, this is where we take on g1 and promote into a knight, because that'll come with check. And once again, the king has to stay close to the queen, so they have to play king e1, after which we go queen h4 check, and if they play g3, we now go queen e4 check plus eyeballing the free rook on h1. Well, these are common lines. Let's look at something more advanced. What if you take on e3 and then instead of white taking your bishop, they don't allow that and take your pawn on e3. So this time there is no promoting our pawn into a knight. Anyways, after f takes e3, I still recommend you go queen h4 check, and here the top played move is g3, after which you go queen e4. That's not check, but it attacks the free rook on h1. So you will see white playing knight to f3 or queen f3 here. Well, that's when you take the bishop on d2, and after knight takes, trust me, you're just going to have a normal game of chess here. You have a very good position as black. Let's say rook b1, you simply go knight f6, developing your pieces, bishop g2, knight g4, pawn to e4, you go queen c5. The idea is to exchange pieces but not pawns and take this game straight into an endgame because you have a winning position and a favorable pawn structure. So that's one way the game can continue if white doesn't fall into your main Albin Counter-Gambit trap. Anyways, wait a second. After f takes e3 and then you play queen h4 check, what if white doesn't play pawn to g3, allowing you to sit on e4, but instead play something else like king e2? Well, first of all, you are guaranteed that white is going to play the rest of the game with their king on the center of the board, and secondly, you're going to have quick development. E.g., here you can just start by taking on d2, and after knight takes, you go knight c6 because you want to capture the pawn on e5, so white has to play something like knight gf3, defending the pawn and also attacking your queen, after which you can go bishop g4, pinning the king's knight to the king, and after h3, you don't even worry about your bishop, you just castle long, putting your king to safety, because if h takes g4, you can simply take the free rook on h1. So they don't have to do that, they'll play queen e1 in an effort to exchange queens, but you first of all take on f3 with check, and after knight takes f3, you don't exchange queens. Here if you want, you can straight away win back your pawn on c4, that is check, and you are going to have a good game from here. So I don't see a point for black to lose this game. Anyways, oh, by the way, after pawn to e3, and then we play bishop b4 check, white doesn't have to block with a knight because that can lead to a more disastrous position. E.g., after knight d2, we can still take on e3. If queen a4 check by white, we always have knight c6 defending our bishop and also blocking the check. Anyways, white has to take back on e3 with his pawn, and you can already see how bad white's pawns are on the center. Double isolated pawns are not encouraged in chess. So you still go queen h4 check, and after pawn to g3 blocking the check, because they cannot block the check with their elbow, or you still go queen e4, attacking the undefended rook on h1. Let's say after queen f3, we first of all take the pawn on e5, and after a3, attacking our bishop, well, we take on d2. Simplification is the key in most of these positions, you guys. Next, we are threatening to capture the rook on a1, so white has to be creative with a move queen e4 check, after which we block the check with our knight, not our elbow, and next we can bring back our queen to f6 if white plays rook b1 or something else. So this position is clearly winning for black. I mean, let's look at something more practical and unique. Alright, so back to our Alpine initial position. Again, d takes e5 is the top played move, after which we play d4. So clearly we've seen that white doesn't have to play pawn to e3. In fact, knight to f3 in this position is the top played move. Then pawn to e3 is the second most played move. That's according to the Lichess database. So let's look at knight to f3 here. What to do after knight to f3 is play knight c6. And just a quick hint for you guys. In this line, just think of castling long. That's what you'll be doing in most of these knight f3 lines by white. Anyways, from here, pawn to e3 is by far the top played move. After which, you start simplifying the game, because that's the whole idea of the Albin Gambit: quick development and simplification. So bishop b4 check first, and once again, after bishop d2 blocking the check, you first of all take the pawn on e3, so that if bishop takes b4, you take the next pawn on f2. If king takes f2, again you're going to win the free queen on d1, so white's king has to stay closer to the queen. But anyways, we take that queen, and after king takes, we take the poor bishop, a3, we go knight c6, and after king e2, they want to win back our pawn. Well, we now go bishop g4, pinning the knight. See what we're doing here, just simplifying the game even further. Take that pawn on e5, and it turns out that we are now up in terms of the number of pawns with a superior position. Next, we're going to castle long and start developing our pieces as fast as we can. Let's look at some other lines, you guys. Now, once again, instead of the immediate pawn to e3, white plays knight to f3. We don't resign. We play knight c6, defending our pawn. And after e3, the top played move, we go bishop b4 check. Bishop d2 blocking the check. Again, d takes e3. This time, you might not see white taking our bishop on b4. They may take on e3 with their f-pawn, just like in the previous line. Well, I just recommend you continue with simplification. Remember, that's the key thing in the Albin Counter-Gambit. Bishop takes d2 check, queen takes bishop g4, threatening to capture the defender of the pawn on e5. So they'll play something like bishop e2 here. It doesn't matter even if they capture our queen. We have rook takes. Just go for simplification, you guys. Knight takes e5. You take back your pawn. And after bishop takes b7, you go rook b8, attacking the bishop. After queen takes d8, you take back with your king, ensuring that white's light squared bishop is still under attack. So they have to play something like bishop e4, after which you start taking the pawns. You guys, this must be an easy gambit to learn against the queen's pawn game. So take advantage of this lesson and let's move on to the next line. Instead of pawn to e3, white may also play pawn to a3 here to stop any of your bishop b4 or knight b4 ideas. But here you have bishop g4 among many other interesting moves. Remember, you just want to get rid of your opponent's knight and win back the pawn on e5. If they play knight bd2, well, you just simply go queen e7, because now white's king is no longer eyeballing your d4 pawn, so they will have to play something like h3, threatening your light squared bishop, after which you take the knight on f3, and after knight takes f3, you simply castle long. Don't worry about what Stockfish says here, because Stockfish is calculating the possibilities in the endgame, which human beings are not good at in practical terms. So if white plays bishop f4 or bishop g5, you can still respond with a move pawn to f6 here, just wanting to take back the pawn if they do nothing about it. So they have to take, and then you take back with your knight. I mean, look at how cramped white's position is. They can't even play e3 here. So they'll play something like queen d3, after which you go knight e4. Why? Sometimes we just put knights on the center of the board in order to occupy more squares. Anyways, knight d2, well, we simply play knight c5 attacking the queen. And after queen f5 check, just play rook d7 here, covering the check, so that if pawn to b4, just go knight e6. And here Stockfish already favors black because of how well developed black's pieces are in this position. Anyways, well, back to this position, still in the knight to f3 line where we play knight c6. And well, this time instead of pawn to a3 here, what modern players are playing is knight b2. And whenever you see knight b2, just know that white wants to fianchetto his bishop on g2 and castle short. They want to play this in the King's Indian attack style. So what I recommend here is to play pawn to f6. You just simply want to open up some more lines. You are not gambiting a pawn here, by the way, even though you are already a pawn down. You just want to have some quick development. After a3, for example, stopping bishop b4 or knight b4, you simply go bishop g4. You see, it's all about quick development. They'll play g3, and there's this line that you can try out, queen e7 here. The plan is to play pawn to d3, putting more pressure on the e2 pawn, and I have to play e3. So we saw this happening in the game between Legnell and Nimila in their famous game that they played in 1941. So after pawn to e3, white played knight d4. Since the king's knight on f3 was pinned to the white queen, so white here just decided to castle short, and then black played knight e2 check. And after king h1, black decided to castle long, which is what I would do in this position. b4 was played, and then pawn to h5. So white is attacking on the queen side, and black chooses to attack from the king side. That's how you're supposed to play chess, you guys. Queen b3, h4 was played, g takes h4, and then knight e4 by black. Knight takes e4 was played, and before taking back the knight, black played an in-between move, bishop takes f3, where it mattered the most, okay? So knight g5, maybe white was stopping queen takes h4, which was threatening to mate in one. But anyways, black still captured the knight on g5, and after h takes g5, here there's a mating tool that I would love you guys to find and leave your answers in the comment section down below, because I do read all of them, and I'm going to shout your names out in my next video if you can get this right, I promise. The line that you're not going to see many white players playing here is c takes d5, because this has proven to be only good for black. You just take back with your queen, and after knight c3, which is the top played move, you just take the pawn on d4. That is a free pawn, and now you are no longer down a pawn. Again, after c takes d5 and queen takes d5, you might not see white playing knight c3 here. Under normal circumstances, they may play d takes e5, but hey, it's a free world. Take white's queen and make him lose the right to castle. Knight c6 attacking the pawn, and if pawn to f4, this is where you remember the minority attack. Start the attack on the side of the board where you have a few number of pawns, unlike your opponents. So you go pawn to f6 in an effort to simplify the game even further. So this will just be a normal game of chess, you guys. Remember, the whole idea is to get rid of the king's knight and win back our pawn on e5 plus quick development. So this will be nice. Now let me show you one interesting line that you can play with white pieces in order to play the Albin counter lines that I just showed you guys, even with white pieces. So let's go. Alright, so here we are with white pieces. I recommend starting with e4 and the reverse Albin Counter-Gambit trap that I want to show you guys can occur in the Sicilian defense, where black plays c5, one of the greatest defenses for black against e4. So you simply go c3. This is called the Alpine variation. The idea is that if white plays the so-called anti-Alpine variation with pawn to d5. Remember, in my previous video, I talked about the move knight to f3. This is where you can surprise them by not playing the move knight to f3 here. Instead, you go pawn to d4 right away. Well, once again, the top played move is d takes e4, which you will see, after which I recommend you go d5. The idea is that if they play e6, now you can simply go bishop b5 check once again, and the top played move is bishop d7 here, after which you can simply take the e6 pawn, so that after bishop takes b5, again you go e takes f7 check, and once again, if the king takes the pawn, well, they'll lose their free queen on d8, so the king must stay closer to the madam, king a7, after which I recommend you take on g8 and once again promote to a knight, so that this comes with check. the black king has to stay closer to the queen once again. You don't take the queen on d8, you go queen h5 check, so that after g6 you now go queen e5 check. That would also win the free rook on h8. So what we are seeing right now is the exact mirror of the Albin Counter-Gambit trap. Anyways, just in case this doesn't happen in your games, what you're going to see most of your opponents playing is knight to f6 in this position, after which you go pawn to c4. You know, the funny fact here is that even though black has a slightly better position in the eyeballs of Stockfish, our d pawn is simply a passed pawn, and that's all we need to defend in this line up to the end. E.g., black may play e6 in this position, what you simply go knight c3. If they take on d5, you recapture with your c pawn, and if they play bishop d6, which they do, what your plan is very simple. Put your king's knight on g3 so that you can put more pressure on the e4 pawn.